recording. And this meeting will also be recorded with the audio and the video. Okay, so we are now live and you all are ready to commence.
Okay, thank you, Melissa.
Sure thing.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call this organizational and initial meeting of the Board of Ethics for the City of Espanola to order at 4:01 p.m. on Thursday, November 5th. Let me take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Jonas Nahum. I am the contract city attorney, along with Nancy Long, who is another attorney in my law firm for the City of Espanola. My role here today is going to be larger than what it will be in subsequent meetings. Today, I'm going to sort of run this meeting so that we can get through the agenda items. But at today's meeting, you all will elect a chairperson, and that chairperson will be the person that will direct and run the meetings, and also may, in fact, run the eventual hearing that will be conducted by this board to hear the allegations that are alleged in the complaint. I am here and I will be here at every meeting to support the board. If you have any legal questions on the process or any sort of question, that's what I'm here for. And you can feel free to always stop and ask for any legal guidance. I'd be happy to provide that. And of course, I want to highlight your service today and thank you all for agreeing to serve on this board. This is a very important matter, I think, to the city. This is a board of ethics, and you will be asked some pretty important questions and be asked to make a decision on those very important questions. So I thank you for your service, and I know that the city thanks you for your service as well. This board has been formed to hear a complaint against a member of the city council. We anticipate conducting 3 to 4 meetings over the next 60 days, including this meeting. So there will be probably 2 or 3 more meetings before January 5th over the next 60 days. And because of COVID, we anticipate that the meetings will all be remote like this and that we won't actually have any in-person meetings given what the trends look like. We don't suspect that the governor is going to let more than 5 people in a room anytime soon. The board has 60 days from the service of the complaint on the city council member to conduct the hearing. So that's why I said that most likely the 60 days will run on January 5th. I imagine that today the board will take action to serve the complaint on the city council member that is the subject of the complaint, and that will most likely happen tomorrow on November 6th. So under that timeline, 60 days would be January 5th. So we hope to have this all wrapped up by January 5th. You will learn about the allegations of the complaint and who the parties are at the exact same time that the council member that is the subject of the complaint learns about the complaint. Because the plan that we have is that with your authorization today, we will serve the complaint on the city council member and carbon copy all of you on the same email so that everyone receives the complaint at the same time. The complaint and any records that are created at the board are public records. They can be requested by members of the public, just so you know that everything that we do here will be open. All of our meetings will be conducted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act and will be open meetings, and all the records that are created likewise will be subject to public production. The only part of this meeting that I suspect that will be behind closed doors are your deliberations. So after you've heard all the evidence and the hearing is over and you deliberate, just like a jury would, those deliberations will be behind closed doors. Everything else I anticipate will be out in the open. Again, thank you for your time and your service to the city of Espanola. And I look forward to working with you on this matter. The first item of business is a roll call today and a determination of a quorum. Melissa, if you are still available, would you conduct a roll call? Perhaps she's. Oh,
Okay. Jose Archuleta,
I'm present.
Francis Madrid,
Present.
Ricky Cerna,
Present.
Chris Roybal,
Present.
Carla Martinez.
Present.
Okay, all 5 are present.
okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. The next item of business on the agenda today is the approval of the agenda. And I don't know how many of you have had experience on boards before, but just a little comment on process. Generally, there needs to be a motion to take action on an item, and then a second to that motion. And then the city clerk will take a roll call to hear all votes. After there is a second, the motion may be opened up for discussion. And if anyone has an opinion or comments on the particular motion, that's your opportunity to state your position. And after that is done, we will have a roll call vote on that particular motion. So the first item that requires a motion today is the approval of the agenda. The agenda has 4 items on it today. The first is the election of a chairman. The second is to authorize the service of the complaint upon the respondent, who is the city council member. The letter C on the agenda is the selection of a presiding officer. That item we may or may not take action on. That all depends on whether the chair decides that they want to have a presiding officer. That would be a contract person that would come in to run the hearing if the chair does not believe that they are well equipped to run a hearing. That's an option for the board. We can outsource that job, the selection of the presiding officer. But after we select the chair today, we'll ask that person, that chair, who's ever selected, whether they would prefer to run the hearing or outsource that job. And lastly, there will be an adoption of the board policies and procedures, and then we'll schedule a date and time for the next meetings. So do I hear a motion for approval of the agenda?
Mr. Nahom,
Yes,
Chris Roybal, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented with item C at the discretion of the presiding officer after the election.
thank you, excellent. Do I hear a second?
I'll second, Jose Archuleta.
Very good. Melissa, could we have a roll call? I can do it, Melissa, don't worry
Oh,
about it.
I have it. No worries. Okay. Jose Archuleta,
Approve, yes.
Francis Madrid,
Yay.
Ricky Cerna,
Yes.
Chris Roybal,
Yes.
Carla Martinez.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on, the first item on the agenda is the election of a chairman. I think the process for this is that we can entertain any nominations that any of the board might have for a chair. And I think what we should do is collect all nominations first. And then depending on how many nominations we get, we'll conduct a vote as to all of the nominations at once and see who comes out with the most votes. So,
Mr. Nahom,
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Chris Roybal as chairman.
Okay, anyone else?
Actually, Mr. Nahom, Chris Roybal, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to decline that because of my work environment.
Okay.
But thank you, Mr. Archuleta.
You're welcome.
But again, secondly, I'd like to nominate Mr. Archuleta for chairman. Gotcha.
Okay, and anyone else?
I-
Okay. Well, hearing no other nominations, that would be nomination by acclamation. It's what we call that when you have no one running against you. Mr. Archuleta, you are the chairman of the Board of Ethics.
Thank you, Mr. Archuleta.
Thank you, Mr. Roybal. Thank you. Mr. Nahom, one question that I have on the chairmanship.
Yes.
Is the chairmanship based on Robert's Rules of Order, where we only vote as a chairman to break a tie or to create a tie?
Well, because this board is only made up of 5 persons, we don't suspect that there will be a tie. So we have not given the chair tie-breaking authority because there's only 5 of you. So we don't anticipate any ties.
But in case there is a tie by the first 4 members, the chairman can break the tie.
Well, in that case, you'd be voting as a regular member, and your vote
Okay.
would.
All right. Thank you.
And Mr. Archuleta, actually, the city manager did send you earlier today the rules and procedures, and in those rules and procedures, there are rules governing the role of chair. So you
Okay.
can go ahead and take a look. If you have any questions at all, feel free to contact me, or at the next meeting, you can ask those questions and we can address any concerns you have about the chair.
Okay, could we get your contact information?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I will give it to the city manager and he will provide it to you.
great, thank you.
Jason, if I could just for a point of order, just for, I guess, just to be safe about the process, could we go through the motions of a first and a second and a roll call on the chair nomination just for formality?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I'll make the motion to accept that the board accept the nomination that Mr. Archuleta serve as the chair of the board.
I'll second that. Chris Roybal.
Okay, Melissa, can you do a roll call vote on the motion?
Can I hear the motion once again, please?
Sure. It's a nomination that the board, it's a motion that the board accept the nomination that Mr. Archuleta serve as the chair.
Got it. Okay. Jose Archuleta?
No,
Okay, I'm taking notes as we go, so just bear with me. Okay, Francis Madrid?
Yes, I don't have time.
Ricky Serna?
Yes.
Chris Roybal?
Yes.
Carla Martinez?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay, next item on the agenda is to authorize the service of the complaint upon the respondent. And I described a little bit before about how we're going to do this. The rules give the board the option of doing service by email, by mail, return receipt requested, or by personal service. I'd recommend that the board choose to do it by email, by authorizing the city manager to send a copy of the complaint to the respondent and then CC all of you. That way the timing works out that everyone gets notice of the contents of the complaint at the same time. But it is up to the board's pleasure which of those 3 methods of service the board decides to use. So the motion here would be a motion to authorize the city manager to serve the complaint in a certain method, either by email, by personal service, or by certified mail. And I'm recommending that you authorize them by email, but that is at your discretion.
In the home of Chris Roybal, my recommendation would be for the benefit of the respondent, that he and we as board members get that information both via email and via certified mail. I don't know what the respondent's legal responsibilities are, or what his if he even has legal representation, or he or she. At this point, we don't know who the respondent is, but I believe that it would benefit and it would behoove the city to both make arrangements to have that information emailed and via certified mail to the respondent and to the board.
Very good.
Chairman, if I could comment on that, I'm worried that might create confusion about when the 60-day clock might start. If we send it via email, there's an assumption that 60 days starts the day the email is sent. If we send it certified mail, then it could be, of course, alleged that the 60 days start from that point. So to eliminate confusion, I'm recommending we do it, one or the other. My preference would be just an email with a request that the counselor return email acknowledging receipt.
I agree.
Okay, so I think Mr. Cerna, perhaps a motion to that effect. There was no second to Mr. Roybal, so.
Oh, yeah. So if
Go
it's
ahead. You made a suggestion. I didn't think you had done it in the form of a motion. So go ahead.
Right. So if the board feels that an email is sufficient, I would withdraw my recommendation. I can make it in the form of a motion, but I'll withdraw my recommendation, my opinion.
Okay.
You're starting up.
Yeah, if I can, Mr. Chair, a motion that the board authorize the city manager to notify the counselor of the complaint with a copy to all board members, requesting from everyone confirmation of receipt.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Cerna to notify the counselor by email with notification of receipt of said email. Seconded by Mr. Roybal. Chris Roybal. Is there any discussion?
Yes. Francis Madrid. As long as the email does have a delivery acknowledgement and a read acknowledgement.
Okay.
Is that all right with you, Mr. Cerna?
I'll accept that. Yeah, I'll accept that friendly amendment there.
Okay.
Very good.
So the motion has been amended that the counselor will receive an email with acknowledgement of receipt and acknowledgement of it having been read. Is that okay with your motion? Okay, there was a second by Mr. Roybal.
I agree.
Any further discussion? There being none, could we have the roll call vote?
Jose Archuleta,
Yes.
Francis Madrid,
Yes.
Ricky Cerna,
Yes.
Chris Roybal,
Yes.
Carla Martinez.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to action item 4C, which is the selection of a presiding officer. Mr. Archuleta, as the chair, that is really, this is something that you would request that the board authorize the city manager to hire a presiding officer if you feel that's necessary. I can give you any information about what your role would be. If that would be helpful, just let me know.
Yes, I think what we actually need to do is first look at the complaint
Okay,
and then decide how complicated this is going to be.
Okay.
And if it's going to create a lot of legal issues where the city could be held liable or then I think, I don't know what the decision can be, but I don't know if we would actually need, I believe that the presiding officer would have to be an attorney. Is that correct?
yes, yes.
That would be a contract attorney that does this by contract with through the city. Somebody else besides you, I believe, right?
That's correct, yes. It would probably be someone that the city already has a contract with for these types of services.
Okay, so why don't we why don't we postpone this part of the agenda till a later date and look and see what the complaint is and see how we feel, how comfortable we feel dealing with it on our own.
Okay. That sounds fine. And of course, this was sort of something that was in your discretion. So I think that path sounds fine. And at this time, you're not going to request that the board authorize a presiding
Correct.
officer. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So let's move on to the next order and last order of business, which is the adoption of the board's rules and procedures. Now, this is a very legalese document. I think the city manager shared it with you. I don't expect you to read over it and find issue with a lot of the rules in there. I can give you sort of a general summary of what is in there. I'll let you know, importantly, it does contain a revision authority, so that if the board finds something about the rules as we go down the road here that it doesn't like, the board does have authority in the rules to amend or revise those rules. Let me just briefly tell you a little bit about how the process of the hearing will go. So this is basically an administrative hearing that is kind of like a court case in which you'd have a trial judge and a jury, but there are a few main differences. One of the most significant is that the rules of evidence are different. In this proceeding, hearsay is admissible, and there's other things about admissibility that may be more strict in a regular trial court that are much more lenient in an administrative hearing like this one. Some other things to note is that there will be a pre-trial conference probably about 30 days before the actual hearing, in which both parties will present to you their plan for the hearing. That'll include stipulations of facts, the witnesses they plan on calling, the documents they plan on introducing to you, any objections they may have, either to the composition of the board or to the exhibits or witnesses. And those things we try to gather about 30 days before the hearing so that the board will have a chance to take a look at what objections or motions have been made and rule on those before the hearing is actually conducted. The rules and procedures contain a consent order settlement process, so that if the parties decide that they don't want to conduct a hearing, they do have an avenue to try to settle the case. The board has ultimate authority to approve that settlement, whatever it is, and issue a consent decree. And there's a process for that in these rules. There's also a process for investigations. If the board thinks that there's some facts in here that the board thinks there should be some investigation of, some further investigation of, the board has the power to hire an independent investigator to go out and discover those facts and report back to the board. That's something, of course, that the city would provide. And of course, the city is going to provide anything that the board needs. The rules state that. Any resources or materials that the board needs, the city will provide to you. There will be a hearing. The hearing will have opening and closing statements. There will be witnesses. There will be cross-examination. And at the end of the hearing, the Board of Ethics will deliberate and will reach a decision. And that written decision will be authored by the chair and then distributed to you all to approve the decision. And let me think if there's anything else. These rules do give you basically 3 options to find at the end of the hearing. You're either going to find that the council member is guilty of a deliberate violation of the Code of Ethics, guilty of a non-deliberate violation of the Code of Ethics, or not guilty of a violation of the Code of Ethics. There are appeal rights for the city councilor that is the subject of the complaint. He can file an appeal in district court within 30 days of your decision. As I've said, all records of the board are public records, and the meetings of the board shall comply with the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. And so that, are there any questions about the rules?
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, it was my understanding that this board was established to hear complaints, ethics complaints. Now I'm understanding that it was created specifically to hear this particular incident. My question being, are there any other ethics complaints that have come before the city that, are we going to hear, or is this board established specifically for this one-time counselor's issue, or is this an ongoing board that we're going to hear others, or we should have heard others?
Sure, that's a good question. Thank you. So according to the city's code, this board is formed to only hear this particular complaint. That the process that the city used for this is there's an investigative committee that is the first step. That investigative committee hears any complaint that is filed and decides whether that complaint holds any merit. In other words, if you believe all the allegations in a particular complaint, does it state a violation? If you accept everything is true, does it state a violation? I'll tell you that there were 3 complaints that investigative committee reviewed. It found a complaint that was worthy of sending to this Board of Ethics as to only one of those complaints. The other 2 did not meet that standard of accepting all allegations as true. Is there a violation? The other 2 complaints did not meet that standard. So according to the city code, this Board of Ethics is only formed for that one complaint. If there were to be another complaint filed, there would be another investigative committee and another board would need to be formed to hear that one. That's the way the city's code currently is. Although if you've listened to any of the city council meetings recently, the council is considering amending their code of ethics. But at this point, at this time, that's the process that they have, so that this board is supposed to do this one.
So is this sitting board going to have an opportunity to speak with the established investigative committee?
No, there's nothing in the process that talks about or provides authority for the board to hear testimony or anything else from that investigative committee. That investigative committee's role is now over.
Okay, and what, I mean, realizing it's an administrative review or an administrative hearing, but then we get to, you know, the number five, the appeal to district court. So we're going from an administrative hearing to district court. So we're going from an administrative to a legal aspect. So ultimately, what are the consequences that this counselor could be facing?
Sure. So in the city's code of ethics, there are really only one or two consequences. And I've put those in your rules. Let me read you. Okay. The board may recommend to the governing body that the respondent be subject to public reprimand or censure by the governing body. No other form of penalty is authorized. So that's the most that can happen to the city councilor is a form of public reprimand or censure. I feel like they're both the same things. That's why I kind of said one or two. But that is the full authority that the city's code gives the board to enforce a penalty.
And I hate to be the stickler here, but
Yeah.
what is a public reprimand? What is a censor?
I think that there's no exact definition. I feel like it's just really a slap on the wrist in the public that the governing body would accept your recommendation of a finding of a violation of the code of ethics, and they would just take action to publicly reprimand that counselor in whatever form they decided that would be, either at a city council meeting. But it would go into some sort of record that this counselor had been reprimanded in that way.
Okay. And we will know who the respondent is upon receipt of the email.
Correct. Right. You will get that email. It will have the respondent and also importantly the complainant who actually made this complaint against the city council. You'll know both parties.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
The city ordinance, I received this as Carla, when this board was first being established, called for the board to be in place for 2 years. And my understanding is this is just for this one issue. Can you clarify?
Absolutely. So there is a pool of candidates for this board. There's 18 names in that pool. That's the pool that exists for 2 years, because every city councilor, every time they are elected, they have to submit 2 names. And because their terms of office run for 2 years, those 2 names are in that pool for those 2 years. So that's where that is. And then from those 18 names, when there is a complaint that's filed, the city manager goes ahead and selects 5 names from those 18 for that complaint board, I'll call it, the board that's actually going to hear the complaint, to hear that particular complaint for that time. And then if another complaint comes in, the city manager goes back to that pool of 18 and selects 5 other members to hear a subsequent complaint.
So I'm understanding that 18 names, the mayor gets to submit his nominations as well.
That's right, yes.
Okay.
City councilors.
I'm sorry, but I lost my feed for one.
Oh, no problem. Carla had just asked about whether this board is constituted for 2 years. Did you hear that question, Mr. Archuleta?
No, I didn't know.
Okay,
We were discussing the censure and,
okay, yes.
that's what,
Ms. Martinez had asked, is this board constituted for 2 years? Because she had read in the ordinance that there was a 2-year time period that the board needed to be formed for. And I was explaining that there is a pool of 18 names from which this board was chosen that exists for those 2 years. And that as complaints are filed, the city manager pulls 5 names out of that 18 name pool to form a board of ethics for each particular complaint as they are filed. So the answer to her question would be, this particular board does not last for 2 years. It's just here to hear this complaint. The pool of 18 names lasts for 2 years.
So will you be sending copies of these policies and procedures to us?
Yes, I think the city manager did send you a copy earlier today, maybe an hour or 2
Mhm.
ago. And
I don't believe I received it, but
I didn't either.
okay, I'll make a note of that.
yeah, I received mine, 30 minutes before the meeting.
I have a question. So just to clarify the process, and I'm looking here at, let's see here on page 3, I believe, I guess is where it is, yeah. So first of all, just want to say, and I don't think it changes the motion, but we want to be sure that the email to the counselor articulates that 10 business day window in which they have to respond. Okay, so I think if we want to just make that note for the city manager, because on the section for enforcement, they have that 10 business day window to respond. So I think it's important that that's included in the email. So my question is, what is the next step then at that point? So the complaint is served, the counselor will respond within those 10 days. Is it then based on that response and our review of the complaint that a determination to investigate is made?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, exactly. And I was going to recommend that we have a meeting, maybe around late November. I know with Thanksgiving, it may be a little difficult. People are unavailable, but if we can, in that, so I calculate that the answer likely will be due around November 17th. So maybe we have a meeting that next week after you've all had a chance to review the complaint and the answer and see if there's any investigation that you would like done. We can do it at that time.
Okay,
Hire the
that was my question.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I have one follow-up question. You indicated that in the policy, in the city ordinance or policy, there is a code of conduct. Is that code of conduct, is that distributed to the mayor, to the governing body, to city employees? Is there a signature required on that code of conduct that needs to be submitted to the city? And well, I guess the question would be, and has that been done?
Okay, thank you. There is no sort of acknowledgement of receipt of the code of conduct that I am aware of, like you might have in an employment relationship where the employee needs to sign for the handbook and acknowledge the policies of the employer. The code of conduct here is an ordinance of the city, so it is law. And it governs public officials, elected officials of the city. And so the compliance there is not conditioned on whether they've agreed to it or acknowledged it, because it is a law on the books and they are city councilors. They must comply with the code of conduct.
Does it also imply, or does it apply to city employees also?
No, it does not. The
does not?
city of Española's, the city of Española's code of ethics applies only to city councilors.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Nahom, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Archuleta.
On this issue of the code of conduct, is it part of their oath of office? When they swear the oath of office, do they swear to the ethics of the office?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think that could be something that you would consider at the hearing in your deliberations, but I do not know the answer to that. That may be something to ask the parties.
Jonas,
Yes.
I can answer a little bit of
great.
that.
Thanks, Melissa.
Being that my office drafts the oath of office. What they do swear to are to follow the ordinances within the city of Española and the state of New Mexico. So being that the code of conduct ordinance is an ordinance of the city of Española, they are swearing to that.
Thank you, Melissa.
Sure.
Are they sent to
Thank
any
you.
type of training that involves code of conduct ethics?
The newly elected official training hosted by the New Mexico Municipal League informs and offers resources regarding code of conduct and how one handles oneself as a governing official.
But there's not a formal training for them.
It is when they are newly elected, and there are a series of conferences that are hosted that they are invited to. I know that this year has been a little bit different because some of those conferences have been canceled due to COVID, but for the counselors that have held office for longer terms, I'm sure have been made aware. And I do believe that they receive some of these resources in hard copy. But aside from that, we do have a number of different resources that allow them access.
Thank you, Melissa.
But it's not required?
It's
You're
not
telling
anything
me
that is
resources
mandatory.
and training and resources are two very different things. So
Sure.
are they required to take these, or is
They are
an
not
option for them
mandatory.
to take them?
Yeah, they are not mandatory, but they are highly encouraged.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments on the proposed rules?
No.
Mr. Chair, first I want to be sure that Carla got the rules. Otherwise, I want to be sure she has an opportunity to review them. If it's absolutely necessary to approve them today, we can do that. Otherwise, I want to be sure that if someone hasn't received and reviewed them, that they have a chance to do that before we approve them.
I have not
did,
received them.
I just got it in my email, so I'm just now going through it.
And I got them about a half an hour ago.
Same here.
Okay, well, I think if the board would feel more comfortable, and it's absolutely understandable, to take a look at these rules before deciding on them, because I think it's very important that the rules go along with the complaint, the service of the complaint, so that the respondent and the complainant know now what, what's the process. And of course, the timing for answering the complaint is in the rules. It'd probably be best to have it authorized before we serve. So to that end, it may make sense to have a quick meeting early next week after the board's had a chance to review the rules and determine at that time whether to authorize the rules and condition the service of the complaint and the other items we take action on today, have everything at the same time be done after you've approved the rules. But that, of course, that's the discretion of the board.
So Jonas, is the process and timeline for serving the complaint in ordinance?
Yeah, well, the ordinance says that the hearing must be conducted within 60 days of service of the complaint. So,
And does the ordinance also include this language here about essentially? So I guess what I'm trying to see is if the process through which the complaint is served is in ordinance, then the board can't revise that anyway. So it may be okay to just issue the complaint. We've already motioned it and we've already authorized it. So if that process of issuing the complaint, which is it's this part right over here, right, which is shall cause the complaint to be served on the member of the governing body charged as soon as practicable. Service may be by email, personal service, or certified mail, return, receipt requested, a hearing. If all of that stuff is in ordinance, then it can't really be changed by the board. So since we've already motioned it, we may as well proceed. If
Right.
those things could be modified by the board, then it does make sense to postpone the service until the board approves its bylaws, board's policies and procedures.
right.
I agree, Ricky.
Let me 1 minute. I'm just going to get the code here. I just want to see one thing.
Also, I wanted to follow up on Ms. Martinez's question regarding the code of conduct. When an individual expresses interest in running for council, in their candidate packets, the code of conduct is also issued with that candidate packet. So that is also one way that they do receive the information as to the rules and regulations in which they follow as a potential counselor.
Can you send us a copy of the code of conduct?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I can do that now as we're on the meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Cerna, the ordinance requires only that the Board of Ethics hold a hearing within 60 days of receipt of the complaint. And you haven't received the complaint yet. That's why the service and the receipt and everything is good to have on the same day, because that makes sure that the timeline is all triggered at the same time, that 60-day time period. So I don't think, if the board decided not to serve and to wait until the rules were authorized, that would not affect the triggering of any time periods in the ordinance or in the board's rules, because the ordinance says 60 days from receipt of the complaint.
What I see here, Mr. Chairman, Jonas, is the Board of Ethics, a hearing shall be held within 60 days after filing of the complaint. That's 40-10, service and complaint hearing, disposition of complaint. So my concern obviously is understanding the date on which the complaint was received.
Yeah, so that sentence in the city's ordinance does not make sense, given the sentence above it, which says to hold a hearing within 60 days of the receipt of the complaint, because you can't do both. You can't hold a hearing within 60 days of filing the complaint and then also hold a hearing within 60 days of receipt of the complaint, because they don't happen at the same time.
Right.
So the city's code is internally impossible to work with. It also says that the Board of Ethics members shall be appointed by the governing body within 60 days of the enactment of this chapter. Again, the code doesn't make sense. And that's part of the reason why the city council is intending to amend it. So according to legal interpretation, common legal interpretation, you make the statute workable. So we're focusing on this holding a hearing within 60 days after receipt of the complaint, because that actually lets the statute work. Otherwise, the statute is sort of impossible, because you can't hold a hearing after filing the complaint within 60 days. If there's no Board of Ethics formed, you have 2 weeks between every city council meeting. It doesn't work.
Okay, yeah, well, that's an initial concern, right? Especially if whoever the counselor is going to assert that, the entire process is not in keeping with existing code and ordinances. But okay, well, if then the other thing that's key on that same section 40-10 is service may be personal service or by certified mail return receipt requested. So I'm not sure if our proposed service.
Yeah, so again, because it says may, it's not a
Okay.
requirement. It doesn't say shall.
Okay.
And also, just in the spirit of efficiency, because we had these timing issues, we thought that email is just the best way to do it, to make sure that the timing is triggered at the same time.
Okay.
So then are we as a board, are we violating the city ordinance? By making these changes, by doing what we're doing when the changes to the ordinance have not yet been made by the governing body? Are we in
No.
violation of something?
No. First of all, the Code of Ethics only governs city councilors. So a member of the Board of Ethics, while of course you should be ethical, as a member of the board, and ethics is of course paramount. This particular code does not govern. You're not violating the Code of Ethics by holding a hearing. I think if anything, you are doing exactly what the code requires, which is forming a board and hearing a complaint.
You're adhering to it.
Right, and we're making it work because the statute has a few things about it that aren't drafted extremely carefully, but that's okay. We don't throw a whole statute out and just say, well, I guess we have no Code of Ethics. We make it work, and that's what we've been doing here. And of course, you're right. The parties may raise these arguments to you, and their representatives or they will argue to you about some of these things, and you may have an opportunity to make a decision on some of these arguments. I could anticipate that being a motion. Motion to dismiss the complaint because, these particular provisions were not complied with. That would be something that the board should decide, though, not a single individual like the city attorney or the mayor, or, you see what I'm saying? It should be the board, and the parties will have an opportunity to make those arguments before you. And you can consider their arguments and question them on them and rule on the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I kind of hate to start the whole process off on a funky mode. I mean, we made a motion to serve. If we don't approve the Board of Ethics Policies and Procedures, are we, then the position we're in, right, is okay. We hold off on serving. So I don't know if it would be okay for us to take a quick 20-minute break to allow the members to read through the policies and procedures and then reconvene and then make a motion so that we can kind of move through this process in a more fluid way, understanding that we wouldn't be able to meet again until we could appropriately post this pursuant to the Opens Meeting Act. So if it's reasonable for us to take a 20-minute break to read through the document and then entertain a motion that could include any revisions.
That's fine with me as long as the rest of the board members agree to it. So, it's not an action item, so I mean, do we really need to take a vote? We need to take a vote in agreement for it, but that's about it.
We could take a vote to take a 20-minute recess. That's fine.
Okay. You wanna, city clerk, you want to question the rest of the board members, see what their vote is, see what their preference is.
Did we entertain a motion for the
For
recess?
Yes, Ricky
Yes, we can.
entertained that
We can
motion,
entertain
and
a
I,
motion for recess.
And Ms. Madrid, you were the second on that motion?
yes, I'll second that.
Okay, great.
Who
And
made the
I
first
will-
motion? Mr.
Ricky did.
Sarna,
Mr.
okay.
Sarna.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any discussion on by the rest of the board? There being no discussion, can we have a vote?
Sure.
Ms. Martinez, I think you're on mute.
I am. I was just wondering, Chris received his email.
I haven't yet. I'll check it.
Okay.
Melissa, are you aware that the board members are hoping for an email with the rules and procedures attached? I don't know if,
I did have our city manager Martinez forward
Okay.
that to me. So I will be resending that additionally with the ordinance for code of conduct.
Okay.
thank you.
And I will do the roll call. Jose Archuleta,
Yes.
Francis Madrid,
Yes,
Ricky Serna,
Yes.
Chris Roybal,
Yes.
Carla Martinez.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries for a 20-minute recess. I will pause the live stream of the video, or rather of this meeting, and I will be sending that email in just a moment.
You want to
Thank
give a
you.
time that we come back on?
Right now, we're going into recess at 4:57. Let's get back at 4:20 at least, at 5:20.
5:20? Okay.
Very good.
Thank you. This board is in recess right now. Thank you.